Obviously, deer hunting in South Carolina is extremely important. Right now, we've got about 150,000 deer hunters in the state, of which between 15 and 20,000 are non-residents. South Carolina is known for having long seasons and liberal bag limits. And really, you need to look at the annual rules and regulations publication that's put out by the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources to determine when open seasons are in your area. I'm often asked what to look for in a good deer hunting area, and really that's going to depend on a couple of factors. One of which is, what time of the season it is, what type of weapon you're going to be using. The setting we're in right now is kind of a big woods setting, mature hardwood trees. You would expect a lot of acorns to be falling towards the end of September and really on up into Thanksgiving. This would be an ideal place for a bow hunter type setup. But you want to locate some deer sign on the piece of property that you're hunting. Search out these acorn trees, find the nuts on the ground, but more importantly, find some deer droppings, find deer tracks, find where they've been scuffing up the leaves and so forth. We've got a rub made by a buck earlier in the season right here. So you've got some definite buck sign. I believe there's another rub, back down the hill here about 25 yards. There's a scrape, maybe 20 yards over here. This would be an ideal setting for a bow hunter. It's kind of tight. We've got this food plot maybe 50 yards away, a creek drain coming up to it. So, again, I think it's important to spend some time in the woods ahead of time, locate the deer sign, locate natural food sources, and whenever you've got that, you're in good shape. Just be careful. We were talking about the importance of finding deer sign on the piece of property that you're hunting, and I notice a scrape here, and typically a scrape is something that you're going to find starting in the late autumn. Normally they're initiated by a buck, but I'll tell you, all deer of both sexes, ages, make these scrapes. There's a couple of interesting things to think about. They clear out the leaves. Typically they urinate on it. And again, this is males, females, fawns, all ages. Characteristically, you'll have a broken limb here, and they'll lick it and chew on it. This will probably deteriorate as the season goes on. Deer have a lot of glands, and they have glands in the corner of their eyes, foreheads, obviously on the tarsal glands on their legs. And a lot of this scraping sign is scent communication. It's also visual communication like the rubs are. Now I'll tell you from my standpoint, I'm not a real big person to sit right on top of a scrape, but it's always good to have things like scrapes and rubs in the area that you're hunting, because you know that the deer have been in that area. This particular food plot was planted back the first part of June. We were fortunate this year to have a good rainfall, but as you can see, by the end of summer, end of September, first part of October, you start getting a lot of competition from all the grasses and so forth. This food plot's got a mixture of Ashenominy, Catjang peas, iron clay peas, all three of which are legumes. You might also notice over here to my right is actually a thicket. It's really a brush pile. It's where this piece of property, where this food plot was pushed up about 10 or 12 years ago. It's now naturally evolved into a lot of different things that deer are going to use, not only from a bedding standpoint, but from a food standpoint. You're going to have American beautyberry. Persimmons will be coming in shortly. You've got things like maypops, wild grapes. All of this can be found in this old brush pile here. Let's spend a couple of minutes talking about some of the equipment that you may need, and clearly that's a personal preference. For me, I typically have a fanny pack or a small backpack that I use. I'm fond for wearing gloves as well as a face mask. I like to archery hunt, and with the deer being that close to you, that's oftentimes important. The type of camouflage, there's a world of it out there, as we all know. Some of it's made out of mesh for early season. You got different color patterns and schemes and so forth. I normally carry a headlight so I can get in and out of the woods easy, particularly before and after dark. As far as calls and lures, there's just all infinite variety of calls and lures. You've got a grunt call, you've got a rattle bag that would imitate a buck, a couple of bucks sparring. I don't use this stuff very often. I carry it with me, and on a whim sometimes I'll use it. Same thing holds true for lures or scents. My recommendation is try them every once in a while, but don't use them like a crutch, because I often think that if I'm using something the deer can smell, then they ought to be able to smell me as well, and at that point I failed in what I'm trying to do. And finally, one of the real important pieces of gear, particularly in South Carolina early season, is either some type of insect repellent or a Thermacell like we have here. The bugs can be real bad really up until Thanksgiving in South Carolina. There's an infinite variety of stands available nowadays. A lot of it relates to personal preference. Here we have a more of a traditional type gun stand. It's a ladder stand, but it's about 20 feet tall. It'll accommodate 2 people. They've got blind material around it. It would be great for a kid or a first-time hunter. We've also got a 2-piece climbing stand. This would be great to use on a wildlife management area where you might not want to leave a stand because somebody may steal it. This would be a great stand for a bow hunter. Be portable. If you're hunting acorns or persimmons and need to locate those trees on different days, you can be portable and move around. We've even got a pop-up blind. There's all kinds of pop-up blinds available now. They're fairly inexpensive, easy to carry, easy to put up. You're totally concealed. And finally, when you start talking about hunting above the ground, you want to look into some type of fall restraint system. These are very important nowadays. Most injuries associated with hunting have nothing to do with firearms. It's falling out of a tree that typically results in spinal injuries and other catastrophic type injuries. And finally, good luck this deer season and safe hunting.